Well, it's officially playoff time. New Orleans is the home team here. They're 13-3. Minnesota finished 10-6. So, statistically, New Orleans is ninth in total offense, averaging 373.9 yards a game, seventh in passing yards at 265.2. They are tied for third in sacks allowed at 25. 16th in rushing yards, however, with 108.6, and tied 17th in yards per carry at 4.3. 10th in third down percentage at 42%, and they're tied third in points per game at 28.6. Overall, not too surprising numbers given the fact that they are Drew Brees, Sean Payton, and the New Orleans Saints. So defensively, 11th in total defense at 333.1. They were 20th in passing yards allowed at 241.8, and third in sacks at 51. Fourth in rushing yards allowed at 91.3, but they were tied for 13th in yards per carry allowed at 4.2. Sixth in third down percentage at 35%, and 13th in points per game allowed at 21.3. Injury report, Sheldon Rankins, I believe he was put on IR, but he's listed out he was on their thing for out. Mario Edwards also out with a hamstring. And you have Craig Robertson, a linebacker. He's questionable with a hamstring. Minnesota, offensively, 16th in total offense at 353.5. 23rd in passing yards at 220.2. Tied 5th in sacks allowed at 28. 6th in rushing yards at 133.3. And tied for 11th in yards per carry at 4.5. They're 9th in third down percentage at 43%. And 8th in points per game at 25.4. Defensively, they were 14th in total defense at 341.6, 15th in passing yards allowed at 233.6, and they were tied for 5th in sacks with 48 of them, 13th in rushing yards allowed at 108.0, 18th in rushing yards, yards per carry allowed at 4.3, and they were 19th in third down percentage at 40%. But they were tied 5th in points per game allowed at 18.9. So they have a lot of decent numbers, and then a really good one at the 18.9 per game allowed. Their injury report, Odenigbo, questionable. Mike Hughes to IR, and Alexander, he's out with a knee, which is a problem for the corners, obviously. And now we get into all of this. So offensively, obviously, you need to talk about, getting Kirk Cousins into rhythm early, because we kind of know how big of a thing that is with him. So, get him in rhythm early. Don't kind of have him mess things up. Give him some easy throws. Get him comfortable. It's going to be on the road. And there is one theory you could have, which is to, if you win the toss, receive the ball, kind of try to set the tone early, because if you can go down, score a touchdown in the first drive, then all of a sudden maybe you can take some momentum, take some of the air out of that stadium, give yourself a chance that way. You do have to get the run game going. They were 4th in rushing yards allowed at 91.3 yards a game, but little misleading that is, because there was only an average of 21.6 carries against them, which is 31st in the league. So not many many teams have tried to really run on them, and part of that could be the fact that they are the New Orleans Saints and they're going to score a lot of points. You can't be doing that. Where I think probably the main way of doing this is we do need to keep the ball forever and have pretty close to almost 40 minutes of time of possession if they are to pull off this upset. So need to run the ball, and Dalvin Cook being back obviously helps a lot. I do think they need to have two guys on Cameron Jordan at all times, because you cannot have that guy wreck the game. We've seen these guys wreck the game for Minnesota many times, and it would not be good to see it in the potential last game of the year. Another thing to watch out for is Demario Davis on those stunts. They like to stunt him over the tackle quite a bit, so beware of that. Just no CJ Ham early. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but it kind of feels like every time there's CJ Ham involved early and often, it's a bad day for the offense. So let's just try to prevent that from the first drive. And obviously, no turnovers. Very key in that regard. Another thing to mention is with Rankins and Davenport out, they are missing a combined total of 21 quarterback hits, 7 sacks, and 7 tackles for loss over the course of this season with those two players out. And that's a decent bit amount of production to where maybe you might have a little bit more success, whether it be running or passing the ball. And just something to kind of keep in mind, like you might be able to put up some points every once in a while on this team, just because it's the main thing to be concerned about would be the secondary being a lot of feast or famine, because if it's a feasting day, obviously you should be able to put up points, but if you can't run the ball with this team, you got problems. So that's a thing to look out for. Defensively, nickel corner right now is a big question mark with Hughes on IR. Mackenzie Alexander is out. I would assume Jaron Kearse gets a bulk of these snaps. They did sign Marcus Sherrills, but I assume Marcus Sherrills is mostly for returning duty. I wouldn't surprise to see some Marcus Sherrills in there, but I don't think they start him out there. And I would think it's Jaron Kearse. Holton Hill isn't really an inside corner. So we'll see. If they try that, I'm not entirely sure they do. And don't try to fall for all the motions and the shifts. They do a lot of fake window dressing there down in New Orleans. So just know if they're trying to get you to look one way, they're going to go the other. And you do need constant pressure on Breeze. You cannot give him time to survey the field. And the other problem with getting constant pressure on Breeze is if you can do it, he's going super fast released. That's kind of a thing with him. Which brings me to the next thing. Kendricks versus Kamara in space is going to be a big deal in this because Kendricks isn't completely healthy. Where I'm not sure if we're going to see the Kendricks that we've seen all this season, just because he does have a little bit of an injury, and that's a little bit of a concern. But if Kendricks can win a decent amount of those, maybe you can get Breeze to hold on to the ball just a little bit longer than, 0.2 nanoseconds. And then kind of a more of a question of things. If we better not be having Rhodes follow Thomas, even though I think that it's a weird give and take with that one, because Rhodes is probably our most physical corner, and Michael Thomas being a very physical receiver, you do kind of get a strength on strength matchup there in a way. And I'm not sure if they have him shadow him. I'm not sure I like the idea of him shadowing him and going into the slot when he goes into the slot and, things like that. But at the same time, we don't really have many corners left due to the fact that 2 of them are hurt. And I'm not sure if they're going to be putting him in the nickel just because, we don't really have a nickel corner for this game. So if it is Jaron Kearse versus Thomas, that is another kind of, physical on physical kind of matchup to where I do anticipate Thomas beating both of them. And that's not really a good thing. I expect Thomas to get his yards, and we have to try to limit them in other ways. And, yeah. My prediction for this is I'm taking New Orleans to win this game. I can't pick Minnesota to win the game. It's very hard for me to do that logically. There's nothing here that says we will win this game. And I have them winning 31-23. I do think this has the potential to be a lot more high scoring than this. But I also think this has the potential for Minnesota not to score up to 23. And so I took kind of the middle ground with that mid to low 20s mark. And I would like to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Liking and subscribing always helps. And until next time, I bid you all adieu.